Hello and welcome to Stuck in the Elevator Pitch. We're the two dudes and we like to talk. So here, the only way we can elevate a pitch is when we get stuck in it. So join us in the hot, sweaty metal box of this podcast as we pitch to you our new Doctor Who spin-off. Oh my... We've done it again.
Yeah.
We've done it again.
Quite literally. We've done
Quite
it again.
literally. So this is not going particularly well, being stuck in a lift again. But again, at least we bought our podcasting equipment.
Yeah.
You know.
I do have to say though, this one feels a lot less claustrophobic. Almost as if it's bigger.
It didn't look bigger when we came in.
Is this elevator bigger on the inside?
You know, I appreciate that it is, but I'd also appreciate it was more than 6 inches bigger on the inside. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like if it
was actually a room as opposed to a slightly bigger cupboard.
Yeah, so I can actually stretch my arm out and not hit you. Yeah.
Yeah. Ow.
Sorry, I had to try.
Okay, so we are pitching Doctor Who spin-offs today, and I think some Doctor Who fans might be a bit interested to see this, because I think both of us, mainly speaking for myself, because I'm not 100% certain what yours is, have pitches that are not really the usual talked about spin-offs. I think both spin-offs are kind of going to be something you haven't necessarily heard before, which I think is quite exciting. So, I shall get the ball rolling. And I want to introduce a new spin-off, something I've not really heard talked about before. And this is 3 90-minute episodes of an anthology series.
Right.
Similar to the Sherlock layout of the 3 90-minute episodes, but anthology in the style of series like Black Mirror or Small Axe, where they're just unrelated stories being told every week.
Yeah. Okay.
I want this series to be dark. I think the 90-minute runtime allows for that. It shows this isn't your kids sitting them down in front of a 20-minute show. I think it should be Torchwood, but less of the swearing and gruesome and violence for the sake of it. It's darker, it's scarier. It's got that tone, but we're not just swearing because we can.
Yeah.
Because I still want children to be able to watch this and parents feeling comfortable, but knowing this is going to be this in your grandpappy's Doctor Who. As I say pretty much every week, I think.
Episode.
But yes, so each episode, the idea would be it's written, directed by potentially some big names who want to get into the Doctor Who universe, who get to craft their story within this universe. I think of people like Peter Jackson, who talked. It was talks were, I believe, quite real several years ago that he might come and direct something, but obviously the way Doctor Who works, he can't fit around it. But this show would allow to work to his schedule. It would allow to film in New Zealand, which I'm sure is one massive factor.
Could you imagine Doctor Who directed by Peter Jackson?
It would be amazing.
That would be incredible.
What this show to do, it would be allow people to be more creative, more original. So what I have done is created some different types of stories to demonstrate the kind of ideas. And so, I shall dive into these. The other aspect that I want to keep in this show is that this is an international show at this point. I think the Brits own Doctor Who proper, but I would like this gift of the spin-off to be to the rest of the world, to different places around the world that view and watch this show. And I think that would be a staple. Every episode is potentially a country, a different location, at least within that country. So it's not each series is just a sequel to the last episode. We want fresh stories every season. Yeah, maybe down the line there'll be sequels, but right now I want to focus on one story in one location.
Yeah.
Having said it's all around the world, the first story idea set in the UK.
Really? Well, how
Now,
imaginative of you.
I want to put you in the mindset of where we are. UNIT has been disbanded.
What?
Due to Brexit budget cuts, UNIT
Oh,
is
there we
done.
go.
That's canon, excuse me. And what I would like to do is see what happened to some of that UNIT technology once the government get their claws into it.
Ooh.
This series will focus in on a political debate, if you will. For those that want a reference point of what style this episode should be in, I would be thinking the Waldo moment from Black Mirror, for those of you who have seen this. The idea of you're seeing lots of different sides in this political argument played out on television as a drama. So you're seeing not just what the in-universe audience are seeing, but you're seeing behind the scenes and the debates and the arguments that are happening. Something very political. And the debate here is what I want to get into now. The UK government have rifled through, have gone through all, not UNIT, the government HQ, have rifled through all of UNIT's files, all of their science files, and have chosen the ones that they believe have the most potential. Of course, this isn't potential for peace or exploration. This is development exclusively for monetary gain and warfare. That's what they're interested in. That's where their monies lie. And they found one idea that could do both.
Right.
Deep below the UNIT vaults, somewhere, not deep below them, but deep within them, they find a vat. A vat with a helmet hooked in. And they discover that this is in fact flesh. For those of you that remember the episode, The Rebel Flesh and the Almost People from, I believe, Series 6 of Doctor Who, UNIT found some alien goop that they discovered could be controlled by brainwaves. Now, this isn't the fully formed flesh that we saw in those episodes. This is potentially its origin story within the Whoniverse. This is where humanity got started with it. The UK government, the military, are developing this flesh. As far as UNIT got was getting a brain plugged in to control it and move it across the floor as a gelatinous blob.
Mm-hmm.
But what UNIT discovered, and the reason the project was shut down, was that the flesh could feel. And UNIT, under Kate Stewart's leadership, knew that this was not something they wanted to touch, knew that this was not something that they should be messing with, and made the decision to end the project.
Mm.
And keep the flesh safely stored in its hibernation state, rather than attempt to kill. The government have reached the point, as where this episode, sort of what we're seeing, where the flesh is now a humanoid figure, but in nothing more than a blobby head, blobby arms, and blobby legs. You can see the humanoid nature, but there is no elbows or anything like that. It's still very bendy and blobby. Blobby is the word. But the one thing they have managed to develop is a trigger finger. So all these soldiers, all these flesh soldiers, that they've reverse engineered the flesh to create more, but all these soldiers are born to do is kill and be killed.
Kind of like, what's the episode? I can't remember the episode, but the one where the Doctor's daughter's born.
Yes,
Constantly.
yes, those humans, but they're actual humans. This is just weird creatures. And this is where we start to see the episode. We see a journalist in her home, and a message pings up on her computer. And it is some sort of camera phone footage of these flesh monsters running and being shot and falling to the ground. And seeing that sort of thing we've just seen live, we're now seeing play out through a camera phone. Everything turns on its head when we discover that this is Rani Chandra from the Sarah Jane Adventures.
Oh, wow.
And the email she received was from Luke Smith.
Yeah.
Who has kept track of what files the government has accessed and is now realizing that this is the project they've succeeded in most. This needs to be stopped, and now. He gives Rani the tip off, and I don't know if we see Luke or it's just we know that's where the information came from. But the episode could be about any journalist, but I wanted to make it Rani.
Yeah.
I wanted to make this episode about her and us seeing her as a journalist trying to fight back against the government. So that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a public campaign to end these trials while government starts off denying it, and then it becomes part of their campaign as a government.
Yeah.
Part of their, we want to save people's lives, all of you just want people dead. Think of all the trials we could do, all the experimentation we could do on this and save ourselves. But you have Rani with the human side, the thought side going, but this is a living thing. You're just doing it to something else that we don't understand.
Mm.
And I think the episode ends, the cliffhanger that we're left on is that it's not up to what humanity wants. However much we debate it, we see the flesh for the first time, bar the episodes that we've seen with the flesh in, move independently of control or resist control.
Mm-hmm.
So potentially maybe I have the idea that these soldiers are ordered to come and kill Rani, and they resist.
Well, that'd be nice. That'd be quite cool.
Be where the episode is end. Black Mirror is a huge influence for this, just in terms of the way the episode would play out, the darkness to it, the politics of it, but also the fact that there isn't a solution. This isn't something where you go, oh, they save the day and the flesh is safe. It's just left with, well, maybe they're fighting back, but will that last? Was it the flesh? Was it the humans? Who decided what?
That's really interesting. I really like that.
Yes. So that would be one isolated story. The next one I want to touch on is the one I've developed least, but I think is a solid idea. So this takes us to Australia, potentially New Zealand, but I'm thinking Australia. A series of campers are in the Australian outback. Each night, one of them disappears, one at a time. And all they find the next day is a skeleton.
Ooh.
They're journeying home, but they can only move so fast. And while their camp is set up with light around it, venturing beyond those walls leaves you to the mercy of one thing. The Vashta Nerada.
Oh. I was really wondering where you're going to go with that. That's brilliant.
This is a journey where we see complete strangers, not, what's the word? Just randoms in the Hooniverse fighting together to survive against an alien threat they can't possibly understand. Knowing that to get home, they have to make it through the day, and at night they have to stay in the light. But when one of the campers develops a second shadow, it becomes a debate of morality and understanding. So again, it's isolation. It's a group of characters filmed in effectively one location, being the outback, and they're just on a journey themselves. The conclusion being they defeat the Vashta Nerada by effectively surrounding it by light and burning it out.
Nice.
Something like that. No alien tech, no nothing. They just win because they've done. But in as many of these haunted adventures, scary nighttime adventures do, obviously the group gets slowly whittled down and down and down.
I absolutely adore. Well, that sounds a really weird thing to say when they're a bad guy. I love the idea of the Vashta Nerada. I absolutely adored the episodes where we're introduced to the song. It set up her perfectly, and it was brilliant. And I think bringing them back, because they were terrifying. There was a few Tennant era, can't remember if they're all that series, but definitely Tennant era villains who, I don't know if it's just because it's nostalgia or whether it's just because they were that frightening, but they're seriously terrifying. I was a kid obviously at the time, but things like the Weeping Angels, the Vashta Nerada, anything that came in the dark and was to do with light would freak me out.
Yeah.
And I think
feel
bringing
that.
them back, I mean, they've kind of, I feel like they've done the Weeping Angels too much, but I think that idea of taking a villain that obviously worked and bringing them back is a great way of engaging people in Doctor Who.
And I think one important thing was I think these villains are one-offs in Doctor Who, but I think there's a universe beyond the Doctor, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Of where these things pop up. The Flesh came from somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think I like the idea that maybe this debate is heated at the start, but then people just go with it. I think similar to what you see in politics now, where something might be controversial at one point, but then the more you just say it to people, the more it just happens. People just become apathetic to it. And the idea that the Flesh was something that people were like horrified at, but then they just were like, well, what do I care? Yeah. And with Ashton Arada, I don't think there is room for them. And it took a lot of thought to try and create a situation where I felt the Ashton Arada were warranted, because I do love them. But I also realise that they're not the most versatile. They can't just appear in any episode. And I think once
they're faceless, aren't they? And I think that's the issue.
Yeah, I think once the Doctor has control of a situation, that they don't really stand much chance against them. Whereas and I think again, you put them in a forest. That's where they thrive. So putting them in the outback alone with no shadows really in the daytime, you've got a weaker Ashton Arada. Yes, those ones in the forest couldn't break through the suits. These ones can't break through a skeleton quickly. It takes time. It's pain. And I think that's, again, something very different about it.
And I think taking the Doctor out of that situation really helps, because I think, as you say, once the Doctor had control of that situation, it was fairly fine for them, really.
Yeah.
The issue they had was the fact that there were idiot people around them.
Yeah.
So if you have them all as idiot people, it's interesting. No, I really like that.
And I like the idea that it's a mystery, it's a solving, it's to save their own lives, they have to find out what's happening, they have to think critically, and when someone develops two shadows, that's not okay. We know that's wrong. So it makes you think on that. My final episode, and Peter Jackson, he can have that one if he wants.
Yeah.
I'll give him that idea for free.
With that.
And my final idea, the final episode of this series, set in the US, is a US detective series. Something that is all over our televisions. But something that I think the Whoniverse could really invigorate and change and do something different with. Everyone knows what happens when you go to 7B resting place. You never come back. The house sat on the ordinary street had something different about it. It was shiny, polished and clean, and it most certainly did not belong. We begin our episode with a detective investigating the disappearance of a teenage girl. We see the entire series through the eyes of this detective as we discover that this house, that everyone begins to know is wrong, they now know why. The disappearance of a teenage girl is the first event that happens, and we are well into that investigation. Knowing that the last place she was seen was this house, but for some reason, none of the investigators can bring themselves to find out what's going on. That is until more disappearances happen. As the days move on, we see several more characters arrive at the house and disappear. The next character that we really properly introduced to while this investigation goes on is a teenage boy. His girlfriend was the one who was lost in the house, and he is committed to finding out what happened. It takes a lot of guts, but he ventures up to the house, knocks on the door, and as the door opens, she's standing there, smiling, inviting him inside. He's furious. He's enraged. Like, you've been gone for like weeks. I've been lost and sad and heartbroken, thought something had happened to you, but you're just stood here. And as they walk through from one room to the next, he stops to tie a shoelace before following her in. And when he follows her in, we notice something different, because it's not a teenage girl in the room. She's gone. We're left with one of the men who's disappeared. "Oh, I'm her father," he says. But this boy knows that isn't true. As the conversation develops, he knows that something is wrong here, but he cannot leave without finding the girlfriend he brought with him. He attacks the guy with like a pipe or something, a lead pipe, if you want a cliche, and is searching the house, but he cannot find anyone. What has this man done with his girlfriend? He leaves the house and goes straight to the police in a thirst for horror stupidity. Finally, they're just going to go and tell the police, and we're not going to whine about this. The police return. It's nighttime by this point, and they discover themselves trapped in the house of a Zygon. A shape-shifting creature who can take every feeling from their thoughts and become whatever it needs to become to take control. That's the premise. That's the main plot. But then we reach... Oh, go on. Ask you questions.
I didn't... No. I just didn't think you were going to go with Zygon. My brain immediately went Prisoner Zero from the 11th Doctor.
There's a reason it's a Zygon. This
Anyway,
is when we
carry
discover what this Zygon is doing there and why the house is so wrong. So, rather than telling you how it's revealed, I'll just tell you what actually happened. So, a Zygon ship crash-landed in Virginia, USA. The pod is built in, as would be useful to a Zygon, with a chameleon circuit similar to the TARDIS, although far less advanced. It's able to blend, but it does not have the... I can't think of a word. The perception filter. That means people ignore it. So it lands here shiny and new, and people know something is wrong, but they can't think what. It fits in perfectly, and yet that's the problem. The Zygon who crashed had no intention to harm any human, and simply wanted to fix their ship and go. Seeing Zygon life signs on Earth, they plan to set up shop and, get them to help repair the ship. As we know, there's Zygons. For those of you who don't know, there are Zygons all over Earth in Doctor Who, and they're all blended in as humans. But if he can find some other Zygons, then they will help. They will help repair the ship, and he can get on his way and maybe take some of them with him. That's until the first night, when he's set up shop. He's formed into some form of human that he's found through surveillance, because he can, without the memories, but has taken the form of the human, until that night where the house is broken into. It's a thundery night, and the Zygon, who just appears as a normal human, is attacked by a robber. They end up in the spaceship part of the house, and that robber is thrown by the Zygon into their body print pods. The pods they keep people in to keep the memories alive. And when that happens, lightning strikes and a transfer happens, swapping the bodies and minds of the creatures. This serial killer is trapped in the body of a Zygon, and this Zygon is trapped in the body of a human.
You've gone and Freaky Friday'd it. After making me feel sympathy for a Zygon, you then went and Freaky Friday'd it.
But you should feel sympathy, because this teenage boy we've been following the whole time is the Zygon. That's the form he took.
Oh.
Because he knows the other guy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So he... Oh, no, that doesn't make sense. No.
Wait, yeah, because otherwise Zygon would recognise
He's the serial killer. He arrives later then. That's fine. I should start reading my notes and stop doing this from memory. Yes, so when the boy arrives at the station, there is also another man part of the investigation saying that there's something wrong with this house. That's why the attention focuses to the house.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so the serial killer is trapped in the body of the Zygon, hence the killing. The killing is just the sadistic serial killer. It's nothing to do with the Zygon. The Zygon cannot get back into his body. They have to kill the Zygon. Police drama. And the Zygon is then just stuck as a human.
Yeah.
Which is a bit sad. But I thought it was interesting.
I really like that. I really like how... I know you always talk about it, and I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there with subverting expectations.
Subverting expectations! We need a sound effect for subverting expectations. I'm going to add...
take that clip there.
Right now, subverting expectations, the sound effect. Subverting expectations!
Yeah. There you go. They've done it. But yes, you did very well at subverting expectations there.
Subverting expectations!
Roll clip.
Every time you say it, I'm going to put the sound effect in.
But you did, because at each turn you've gone, okay, this is the trope here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go the opposite. Like the house that doesn't fit in. Usually that would be a rickety old house that's in a line of really nice things, and actually you've gone, nope, all the way around.
But it's brand new, it hasn't aged. It took the print of the buildings around it, but didn't age itself with them. Because it wasn't that clever.
Yeah, and then you've got a monster there, and it's like, oh gosh, he's going to be a bad guy, and that's the reason why he's doing it. Nope, he's actually really nice, and just wanted to get out there, and actually it was a human who caused the issue. Well, there we go. And then...
That idea
instead
specifically...
of just falling into this idea of, this Zygon's started to take people's bodies because they didn't know what else to do, it's a case of, no, they switched minds, this is the bad guy.
This is the bad guy who took advantage of a situation and realised he could kill whoever he wanted.
Yeah. Genius. It was really, really, really good. I think out of all three, to be honest, they're all brilliant. And, you're very good at this, but, I think all three are brilliant, but I think that last one...
That was...
an interesting, completely different take on Doctor Who.
Yeah, to be fair, that last one was the concept jumping off point. That's where I started with the idea of a spin-off is I really like this idea, and you will see this across multiple pitches we do. Lots of the ideas I have are just, what if you just take one little bit of this thing and just go and put that on its own and give me a whole thing. There are two things I love in Doctor Who, and it breaks my heart knowing that they will never be touched on, probably ever again, because they just won't. One of them I know they won't, because the person who would have done it is currently running the show and hasn't done it. One is the Zygons. I know some people didn't like it. I love the fact that there's just Zygons everywhere.
Yeah.
And can we please find out what's happening to them? This obviously
like
is spaceship crashed, a bit different, but you could change it a bit. Whatever. And the
it's
other
very
one,
similar to the one with James Corden in it.
Yes, it's the exact same principle of the chameleon circuit in the street and people are disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
The idea here being you've got that emotional manipulation thing. So when they all end up in this house, in every single room that they might get locked in or trapped in, it becomes really a haunted house horror, but they're seeing their husband or their wife turn on them.
Yeah.
And that sort of idea, and you really have no idea what is happening until in the end of this episode where the reveals are starting to take place. And you see all these flashbacks and backstories. And the other thing I love in Doctor Who, and it disappoints me that it has never been touched on, is the idea that the Silurians have some sort of arrangement to come back and live amongst humans and make that episode. That's where the idea of the top one came from, the idea of a political thing. But I just didn't think that the Silurians I think that's a Doctor Who episode. I don't think that should be done without the Doctor's blessing and presence. Because I think there need to be sinister forces at work. Anyway, we'll come back to that at some point, probably.
No, I do think that, like, as you say, one of the things you do is you take a concept or an idea and go, that has been used in this instance, and take it away. I'm very similar. So I take, like, for me, one of the best things about Doctor Who, I love the overarching sort of like premises and stuff like that, like the Rose and Bad Wolf and stuff like that. But the singular stories in each episode, for me, can be some of the most compelling stories. And like, for me, I always find taking certain episodes of a TV series or taking it into a different setting or going, oh, okay, I like this, let's expand upon it, what else can you do with it? Because I find the emotional beats of Doctor Who are always in each episode.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, the thing that all Doctor Who fans do call for is a Jenny spin-off, or just have Jenny reappearing as the Doctor's daughter, and you sort of go, well, that's never been touched upon. But, like, the entire story of that episode was really interesting and could very much be its own spin-off series. And, you have all these different things, and I think that's one thing that Doctor Who does really well. And I think there's so many different potential for spin-offs, or like, especially in your format, I think it gives all those little different things the opportunity to go, we're just going to tell a single story here.
Yeah. Each episode is a whole spin-off. Maybe we can't make the new Sarah Jane Adventures with the gang back, but we can see where they're at in their lives now.
Yeah.
And we can touch on elements of what they'd be doing and the fight they'd be having. I know Luke works in Unit, and again, one of the series I want to see right now, like, go and make it, is Kate Stewart with Luke at Unit. And I want to see that. And
I loved Luke's character. He was... I loved it. I would love to see him. Again, him and Jenny, I think, just get it made. Get him in there somewhere.
And I think, again, this show is inspired not just by ideas in Doctor Who, but ideas that we haven't seen yet, if that makes sense. Things that I want to see that we haven't had a chance to see, or things that maybe didn't work in one setting. Let's refresh them. One of the monsters, I was desperate. I couldn't make it work for this episode. But one of the things I was desperate to absolve, if you will, was the Absorbaloff. I wanted to find a way.
Just not Peter Kay, please.
It could be anyone. It wouldn't be Peter Kay, but to bring the Absorbaloff back and just stay tuned, because I'm gonna make it happen. At least on this podcast. But yeah, it takes different elements, different aspects we've seen of the Whoniverse, and puts them into single episodes. I think the Zygon one being the most not unique, but the most different than what we've seen already. A detective show, but it's also this haunted house. But we're really seeing it from civilian detectives solving this and just not having a clue that this is an alien. Why is this an alien?
The only thing I would say, and this has always been something that I think a lot of people criticise David Tennant's Doctor for. No, the series, I'd say, rather than obviously his Doctor. One of the things people really love about Doctor Who is seeing other planets. And I remember when it was the 10th Doctor, and people were saying that, why is every other episode based on Earth?
So, if you want the answer to that question, I can tell you. This series is cheap. If you look at the Zygon episode, you're looking at a small Virginian town. That'll do. That's all you really need. The effects are pretty minimal, maybe a couple of scenes worth of effects. It's a practical costume.
Yeah.
If you look at the Vashta Nerada in Australia, you just
that could be done in the volume. No, that could be done in the volume.
Yeah.
In like the bottom Mandalorian films, and just make one, just put it in one of them.
But you wouldn't need to. I'm saying to save even that, you just need a house and a street and a detective's office, pretty much. You don't need an amassment of big, vast, beautiful sets. And that was one of the things that pushed me away from doing a Unit revival show.
Yeah.
This is cheap. These actors that you have are just normal. The stars of a show aren't the actors. You need good actors, yes, but the star of the Zygon show is the fact that there's a Zygon in it. It's not who this detective is. We don't need Michael Sheen coming in to play some cool detective or David Tennant. Not that it
certainly
can
be awesome.
It would be, but he can be the Doctor instead.
Oh yeah, Michael Sheen's the Doctor. They need to be the next Doctor. Sorry,
yeah. The Australian one again. There's no actual real cost of budget. Maybe a couple of fake shadows, but that's not exactly budget
it's just
intensive.
Lights.
The Flesh episode, that political one, being the most expensive, but again, you're looking at lots of camera phone footage. You're not looking at hugely expensive repeated shots. It's again a lot about the politics. I'd compare that episode to Miracle Day, in the way we see the politicians playing their games, but also these characters at the heart of it.
Which one was Miracle Day again?
Tortured Miracle Day. It's the one where everyone
none of them dies
forever. Yeah. And the politics we saw in that, again, you've got 90 minutes of just people arguing over, well, maybe we should just allow people to do this. We probably shouldn't though. But yeah, I kind of like that, and the idea of featuring characters from the universe. I think the Rani idea just stuck in my head of including her in whatever journalistic thing was happening. But one of the other ideas I considered was for the Australia one, maybe Jo Grant's there. Maybe Jo Grant's there with her grandson, because we know they like to explore the world, and please bring Kate Manning back, because she is an absolute gem of a human being. And she would 100% do it. But maybe it's just too much for that episode. Maybe it doesn't need it.
Yeah.
And I think it's about not overstating the idea that this is Doctor Who. It's just got to be. It's just simple. It's if you turned this on and had never seen Doctor Who, okay, the Zygon one be a bit weird at the end where they all turn into aliens, but you wouldn't know exactly what's going on. There is no introductions needed. There's no context needed. You're just ready to go, ready to roll. And I think again, if you don't like Doctor Who, these are things that someone can go, oh, you like horror things? Just watch this one. It's not got Doctor Who in it at all. It's nothing to do with Doctor Who, but you'll really like this one.
It's less wacky. But I think actually, if you were to have, say this was, say, a 3-episode series and each one of these was one of those episodes, I think actually having the introduction with a character from the Doctor Who mythos, from the whole, Who-niverse, as you'd say, I think would bring some people, especially because obviously we grew up with Sarah Jane Adventures being on screen at points, and I think having us now aged up, we'd be more interested in watching that, and it would bring both new and old audiences towards it. Obviously this would be the BBC, so they'd have to produce it properly, which is debatable, but no, I think I really really like your idea, and I think using Sherlock as a base, using Black Mirror as a base, is invaluable in selling the idea.
And the things of every different cast, every different director, writer, team means you're basically making 3 mini movies that are anthology. In the same way, small acts all directed by one guy, but they're all different stories. They all relate. There's a theme. I guess the theme here being Doctor Who monsters. They relate.
Still the point though.
Yeah, and I think this also, if you want to look at it a different way, is a great place to pilot episodes, pilot ideas for spin-offs. Because there isn't... You're making this one thing. In the same way the Sarah Jane Adventures was a movie, a TV movie, effectively, or a long episode, the first ever one. The Invasion of the Bane. It wasn't a series. Maybe it was always planned as a series. I can't remember, but it started here and then became a series. And I think if you want to make spin-offs of Jenny or whatever, put them in this. Make an episode out and prove it works, and then do it. I
think that's the thing. You it's funny because like 5 years ago we probably wouldn't have been able to suggest that sort of thing without it sounding too ham-fisted sort of thing, but actually if you look at things like The Mandalorian, where in the second season Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau went, right, what characters do we want to be eventually have their own spin-off, and then so they introduced all these people. Of them in it. And it worked. Like rewatched and all that, it worked, and it then meant that they all then got their own spin-off, and I think yeah, we're certainly in the right period of time in terms of how TV works now to make it work.
Yeah.
If this was to ever be made, I'd want a contract signed that it'd never go onto BritBox, because no. But
Leave BritBox alone. You don't have to like it, but it can exist
it
quietly
can
in its own
exist,
corner.
but just don't only put this on BritBox.
Oh no, it wouldn't be exclusive. This is your
Because it's
Yeah,
a very
Sunday night
streaming
drama.
service. But I suppose
This-
if you've got Sherlock as it, yeah.
yeah. Again, the idea of this is okay. Doctor Who's currently airing once every 18 months ish, maybe a bit longer. Which this just goes on in the off time. You don't have to air these as a consistent 1 week, 2 week, 3 week. You could air this one. It's a big television. In the same way David Tennant's specials were aired as Planet of the Dead, Waters of Mars. They were just put in air dates. You could just place these around the calendar to give that back and give each one, if not a movie star publicity campaign, but an individual publicity campaign. But they are considered to be part of this anthology series.
Right. I think it's really good.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way of moving into mine in many ways. Because mine would be a weekly TV series. And I just kind of want to sort of preface it with a bit of context. I am not a horror person. I'm not a, thriller. I am a very much a fan of light-hearted action and things being in the daytime. That being said, my favourite episodes of Doctor Who have always been the ones that scare me to no end. The ones that make me want to cower behind a TV. And I don't know why, because it's, well, they're either that or the really moving, emotional ones, which kind of influenced how, who I am as a writer and how I write things. It's always got that emotional beat to it. And for me, Capaldi's era Doctor did that balance really well. There were a few episodes of Capaldi's Doctor where I was genuinely terrified, or just the concept and just the idea of it scared me. And actually this idea kind of came from two of those, well, three of those actually. So one was actually a clip I saw on the Doctor Who Facebook page the other day, which was, remember when the Doctor turned into a ghost and ended up just being a projection of that person from a time into the future?
Mm-hmm.
That was scary. This idea of just the hero or the thing that we loved no longer being there or being corrupted almost. And then the other two episodes were both ones featuring the Daleks, and they're never usually my favourite episodes because the Daleks can be overplayed quite a lot.
You can say that again.
Yeah, but the sewers, the Dalek, I can't remember I don't know the episode names like you do, but the one with the Dalek sewers where they're all technically still alive.
With Missy.
Yeah, with Missy.
It's the Magician's Apprentice and the Witch's Familiar.
Yeah.
I think the sewers are in the second one.
That was terrible. That was terrifying, I should say. Like, that idea of just this tortured souls, the beings that can never die, and this... It showed me how dark and terrifying the Daleks can actually be. And then the other one was actually, I can't remember the full episode, but the opening and ending moments of it stuck with me, which is where the Doctor meets a child, Davros.
This is literally the same episode.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Oh, there we go then. I have not watched them in years. That just says everything, doesn't it? My point is that those episodes then kind of made me realise the potential in the Daleks. But the potential in the Daleks being not the Daleks, but the story behind them.
Okay.
So, that's where we start. Sorry, that was long, convoluted, but I wanted to give you a bit of context exactly where this kind of came from. Because for me, the story I'd want to tell in a spin-off is about Davros because we know from all of his different appearances that Davros is a narcissistic, megalomaniac, absolutely insane, but has almost, in recent times, a sympathetic side. And if you look into Davros, which I really suggest you doing if you like Doctor Who and you like Doctor Who lore, it's a really interesting character to know quite a lot about in terms of his origins, because Davros started out, and this is where we kind of start off, Davros started out as someone who wanted to be a scientist instead of a soldier. So this all takes place right at the end of the 1,000-Year War between the Khalids and the Thals, who both inhabit Skaro, right?
Someone's been on TARDIS Wiki.
I have indeed. I need to do my research. Couldn't do research into what episodes they appeared in, but I need to do my research.
Selective.
Well, yeah, important stuff. Now, this 1,000-Year War has been going on for so long that obviously generations upon generations of people were soldiers in a family. Children as young as 8 would be forced to join the military to the point where they were beaten if they didn't. And only a select few people got to live past the age of 52. You know, it's quite a low mortality, it's quite a low age to be dying, that sort of thing. And so one of those people who survived, though, past the age of 52, was Davros' own mother, called Lady Calcula. Not Calculon from Futurama, before anyone thinks of those gold doofus, but
no one was thinking that.
I immediately saw Lady Calcula and went, wait, Calculon? Anyway, she lived a lot longer than 52. She's obviously a lady, so she had a lot of wealth, and so she managed to make sure that Davros, this kid who wanted to grow up to be a scientist, a healer, a doctor, if you will. Oh
no!
I know. Managed to do so. So he, instead of joining the military, joined the scientist division. So just so you know, the way that the Khalids worked is you had the Supremo, who's the president, dictatorship, totalitarian state, and then you had the scientific elite and the military elite, and that's kind of it. So obviously, you either joined the military elite, or if you were smart enough, once you were already part of the military, you'd go into the scientific side of it. Davros went straight into the scientific part of it, and it gave him a bit of a superiority complex upon the people who he was sort of like not friends with, but like of his own age, because he was like, I'm better than you. You had to go into the military, I didn't. And that's where it all kind of starts with Davros. For the series, it would start with him actually being a lot older, probably around 16, where he is sort of starting in the scientific ranks. He's still quite low in it, but he's out with people. He's out doing expeditions and exploring things and experimenting on things. And at this point, he still very much is the kind-hearted child that the Doctor meets in in that episode. He's still very much shaped by the way that he was helped, and he wants to help people, and I think that is at the core of this character at this point. However, war changes people, and at this point, at the age of 16, he's not seen too much because he's been inside the Khalid Dome, which is the main city, for all of his life, and never really seen the war. But at this point, when he started to sort of like actually get up the ranks, he's introduced to how the war affects people and what happens in it. And because of the fact he has this superiority complex, he believes so much, he has this overconfidence, his egotistical nature that you see in the actual Davros that we see in Doctor Who starts to kind of form, and you see that he believes in his own brilliance so much that he thinks he can't do any wrong. Everything he does, he says, well, I can justify this with my, because I know it will work. I know no matter what this will do, it's going to be for the greater good, it's going to help people, so I don't care who I have to trample to believe that. And that is very much the core of this character. He, at the start, definitely believes he's doing the right thing, and by the end, definitely he's wholeheartedly assured that he's doing the right thing, but because of the fact that war changes him. He doesn't realise that war has made him into a person who his morals and his view of what right or wrong is shifted. So throughout the series, we see him learning about the war. We see him learning about how to survive during war. And quite early on in the series, so obviously we're introduced to his mother, we're introduced to the way that his family has always been soldiers and they've all died, and his mother's the only person he has left, but he's never really been interacting with the war. And so as soon as he starts doing it early on in the season, his developments and how well he's doing almost entices the Thals to sort of see him as a threat. And so they attack the base that he's at. All but one of these Thals end up dying, and you find Davros face to face with this Thal, completely unarmed, and he chooses to spare him because he's like, I'm not a soldier. This is when that decision's been made. He's like, I'm not a soldier. This, it's completely contrast to everything we expect Davros to do. It's like, I'm not going to kill him because that's not who I am. And this is also when that changes, because as soon as he spares him, the Thal runs off. Because he regroups with people, they manage to do a second attack, and he sees the same Thal kill his mother without him being able to do anything. And all of a sudden, Davros is faced with this fact that because I didn't kill him, because I didn't do everything I could, my mother's dead. The only person who really nurtured him and cared for him and believed that he shouldn't be a soldier is dead. And it's at this moment that Davros' mind switches. It's at this moment he realises he can't always save people. In order to save people, people have to die. So it's from this point in the series that we see the progression from the healer Davros, the almost Dr. Davros, to the person who creates the Daleks. Which is where it gets really interesting, because that's when he also has his first interaction with the Time Lords. So, one of the things that the Khalids always believed is that no other planet in the 7 galaxies that they know of could ever hold intelligent life. We see in one of the really early episodes of Doctor Who that they believed that the Doctor, I think it was it might have been Tom Baker's Doctor, was from Skaro, because they didn't believe they could be from anywhere else. But Davros had obviously already encountered the Doctor, and he encounters him again, but not one that we know. He encounters one that's from eons ago, sort of thing. And you see this beginning of the friendship. There's a lot of parallels, there's a lot of crossovers between the two of them. But obviously Davros has this darker side to him that he's still almost suppressing at this point. And then at the end of this episode, where the Doctor's been there and they're helping them sort of like save this research lab from the Thals and stuff, Davros rejects the Doctor's way. The Doctor wants him to spare the Thals that they've managed to disarm and stuff. And Davros chooses to kill them all. And the Doctor just goes, I can't do this with you. I can't help you with this. I can't help you. At the end of the day, you have to make this decision and I'm not going to be a part of it. Obviously, this is a very early Doctor. We know that our Doctor would probably try and stop him. But this Doctor just goes, like, because obviously he's already done it. He's like, I can't be around you. And he just walks away.
I really Really? So are you nearly there, or can I pause you?
You can pause me.
I'm going to pause you. So I just want to dip in here to say, for those of you that don't like the idea of the timeless children, this is where I think the idea comes to fruition. This is where I think the idea proves itself, where you can make a historical show about Davros, but also include the Doctor, but it doesn't have to be a Doctor we've seen before. It can just be anyone. And again, to carry on with it, I really like the idea that we're at a point in the Doctor's timeline, much earlier, where the Doctor is following the code of the Time Lords closer, if not completely, which is do not interfere.
Yeah.
And he has made the choice not to interfere. And I just think that in itself makes this show exactly the sort of spin-off that I think would fit. If you just made it, if this came out now, I think this just fits so well with the vision of the show that Chibnall has. This feels like a Chibnall era spin-off.
So on that as well, so obviously the Doctor goes off, and one of the things that Davros did in the earlier episode, where he sees this Thrall kill his mother, is he ended up actually capturing that Thrall. Everyone thought he killed him. He captured him. He's been experimenting on him this entire time, torturing him, experimenting on him. And this is honestly, I'd sort of see that the soldier killing his mother and the interaction with the Doctor as like one episode and then the next, and then that's the mid-season, because it's literally that second half of the season where we see every part of him learning to create the Daleks. The Daleks don't appear in this at all at this point. In fact, I wouldn't even suggest the Daleks would appear in the series until right at the very end, as in the entire show, till right at the end of whatever the series end up being. Because this isn't about the Daleks, it's about the creation of them. Kind of like Smallville. You don't ever see Superman, because the whole point in the show is the creation of Superman.
Yeah.
So anyway, some of the other episodes that I have an idea for is things like finding Dalekanium, which is the metal that Daleks are made of. And again, it's kind of like interacting with all these different levels of who Davros is. He's always wanting to save people, and so he saves these miners who are mining really deep, but they don't want to go any further in fear of awakening the horned beast, because the Skaro and the Khalids believed that their devil was the horned beast, basically, who is, that everyone theorises, is the one that we meet with the 10th Doctor. And he fires him into a sun. Yep. So, they fear they meet him. So he saves them from, waking the horned beast by actually refocusing them to find these deposits of this metal that he's managed to locate, called Dalekanium, which is extremely versatile. It's basically vibranium in a Doctor Who universe. And then, of course, you... Karen?
So wait, the idea... So the metal Dalekanium already exists?
Yeah.
So
it's an
the
ore
name
found
of the Daleks doesn't come from Kaled backwards. It comes
No.
from a material called Dalekanium.
Well, no, it does. It's just that he calls it... Because he names it.
No. I thought I was really excited. I was like, that is so dumb. I want to see people get angry about that.
Because...
The idea that this metal already existed and it's a complete coincidence.
No. No, they called it Dalekanium.
Fine.
Because of the fact that it's the Kalids found metal.
Why not call it Kaledium?
I don't know, they just didn't want to call it that because it sounds stupid.
These are important questions, okay?
But then, sort of like one of the big season finales, I'd say. Actually, I'd say this is like a 2-part season finales that. So one of the things in the lore of the Whoniverse, and especially around Davros, is that Skaro is incredibly irradiated, and of course, when the Kalas get mutated, they become these things called mutos, which is very confusing for anyone who knows Godzilla. But they become these things called mutos, and in Davros's timeline, he gets attacked by mutos, and that's where some of his scars end up forming from.
Sorry to interrupt you. Just as a quick, are you saying that Daleks are Godzillas?
No, I'm just saying it's confusing because Mutos are also the bad guys in the first Godzilla.
What are the Mutos?
I don't know, the bad guys in the first Godzilla, I've just heard it. I know that that's what they're called. I've
You've
never...
outed yourself as a fake fan there. Fake Godzilla
No,
fan.
I've never watched Godzilla. So, yes, of course I'm a
why
fake
you,
Godzilla fan.
so you're not confused?
No, because I'm confused because I've watched things like, I don't know, Cinema Sins, where I've seen the first Godzilla on there, and they've spoken about the Mutos as being the bad guys. That's why.
So what you're saying is this series concludes with Godzilla versus Daleks.
Yeah, it is, and it makes a lot more sense. Yeah, it makes a lot more sense than a monkey punching a dinosaur, as you say. Let's not go into that. Anyway, the season finale would be about them going to a research lab which is outside of the Kaled Dome. It's been overrun by Thals, and in the first episode of it, they get to this expedition. They start the expedition. They get to the research lab, and the way that Davros ends up managing to defeat the Kaleds is by completely poisoning the atmosphere in the lab. It only targets them, targets their physiology, and it kills them all, which is very extreme. But also leads to because obviously these are all things that he's discovered in his experimentations, which you see sort of like peppered almost like end credit scenes throughout the series. And this is also how he, in the later series, is going to not eradicate the Thals, but get them to a point where they can't attack the Cowards anymore, and which forces them to be pacifists, as we see in the actual Doctor Who series. So anyway, he targets them and it kills them all. On the way back, they're attacked by Mutos. It's obviously where Davros gets scarred.
This is where Godzilla comes out,
yeah. This Godzilla comes in and he just like nuclear breaths all of them. They're all no.
Wait, so in fact, pause again, just to interrupt you for about the 20th time. If Godzilla was fighting Daleks, see, at least with Godzilla versus Kong, they have different powers. But like Daleks basically just have. Also, I'm imagining a giant Dalek, just so.
No. I'm not imagining a tiny one just like firing at his ankle.
But they both basically have atomic breath. But he has a little laser and he has atomic breath. Would they cancel out?
No, I'd honestly say that the atomic breath of Kong was called Kong of Godzilla.
Kong's atomic breath, yeah. We do.
Yeah. As well as his axe. No, so I don't honestly think that would be able to pierce the Dalekanium.
Okay, so the Dalek wins, is what we're saying.
Well, maybe not, because actually... So I don't think it wouldn't be able to pierce Dalekanium, but there's obviously a lot of weak spots on a Dalek.
I'll tell you what happens. Just for spoilers for anyone who wants to save Godzilla versus Dalek for the cinemas. Coming to the cinemas 2027.
Yeah.
I'll put...
Because Godzilla's going to win versus Kong, because obviously.
Well, no, exactly. See, this is the point. So you think Godzilla has won in Godzilla versus Kong. This is the longer game. But actually, then we get to Godzilla versus Dalek, and Kong just rises from his grave, rips the Dalek eye stalk off, and just starts beating Godzilla with it. That is the best Doctor Who spin-off. End of episode.
There we go, we've done it.
Sorry, carry on.
So yes, they end up getting captured by Thals while they're weakened, because obviously they fend off the Mutos, but they don't, because they're irradiated, they're a bit crap.
Yeah.
But they get captured by Thals, and they're forced to work, because they know they're the science division, they're forced to create weapons for the Thals. The rest of the scientific team consists of the higher-ups almost, not the highest higher-ups, but people who are higher up than Davros. And so they're all just creating these weapons, and Davros sort of starts experimenting, and this is where we see him create the prototype for the Dalek weapon.
Ooh.
And he uses it, because obviously the other weapons, they still need the accuracy, they still need to shoot them in the right place, just like a normal gun would.
Yeah.
Whereas the Dalek weapon, if you hit, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
And Davros uses it to complete... But while in captivity, these other scientists kind of realise that the Thals and the Khalids, they're not that different. do. No, they're both actually just looking for peace. They just want to end the fighting. That's why they're fighting. You know, it's 1,000 years after the war started. They've forgotten the reason why they actually started the war 3 times by now. They're just
very much like that episode of The Doctor's Daughter that you referenced earlier.
Yeah.
They're only fighting because they think they should be.
Because everyone else has, yeah. And so they want to kind of end the fight. And so these scientists sort of go, why are we fighting? Why are we doing this? So they're very much leaning on towards the side of we need to find a way of stopping this from continuing, stopping us from fighting. Davros kind of eliminates all hope of that by murdering absolutely everyone from the Thals. He just basically mows them down like a minigun with that Dalek weapon. And then the scientists kind of turn on Davros and say, no, you shouldn't have done that. This isn't right. We needed to save these people. We're they're no different from us. And because obviously Davros is blind to this, he absolutely hates the Thals. They took everything from him. He kills those people as well. So, of course, Davros goes back. This is kind of the end of that arc for that first series. He's fully turned into this I will win at any cost that we see installed into the Daleks. He's already found some of the things that have that end up being part of the Daleks, and he's also, in these experiments, found how to genetically modify someone. He's been constantly experimenting on the Thals that he's been kidnapping and stuff like that. And so at the end of this series, we see him, obviously, he's killed a lot of people who are higher up than him, so he's been promoted 4 or 5 times. He's almost the head of the scientific division, but he's now very much in charge of how the Khaleds fight the Thals. He's not quite in charge of how it gets deployed and whether or not it goes, but he's very much a person who comes up with these ideas so that someone else can make the decision. And of course, we've seen throughout the series that he's able to target their respiratory system and kill them. He's able to create weapons like the Dalek weapon. He's able to use the Dalekinium to better armor people, and you see the creation of what will end up being the creation of the Daleks. But of course, we know there's a lot left for Davros to do. He's still yet to be crippled and be put into the chair. He's still yet to have the eye stalk, and all this stuff is yet to happen to him. He's still yet to properly go insane, because at the moment, he still thinks he wants to help people.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to just kill everyone. He wants to help people. He just wants to stop the fighting. But in later seasons, that's when things will start to change more like that. But yeah, that's exciting. How I see it.
I think, as I've said, I think the Doctor stuff is a really good way to link it with the show that's happening now, in a way that my idea didn't. Mine was just taking ideas from the past, but yours is very much feels like this is in the present. And I think exploring the Daleks in a way without any Daleks is very exciting to me, because I think one of the problems with Davros at the moment is he's a very interesting character. I think there's lots to explore there, but if you want to do that, you also have to have Daleks in it. And I think the episodes you referenced, in fact, are a great example of where Davros has a quite interesting story happening, and then there's also Daleks in it for some reason. And I feel like that episode might genuinely be better if you get rid of the Dalek stuff and really just focus on what Davros is doing and make it more about him. And I think, again, if you make that episode what you've just described, that episode is significantly more exciting and interesting. Not that it's a particularly bad episode. I just think
the Daleks are the Daleks that you kind of look at them and go, all right, what's new? And no, aesthetic choices are not new.
And so this would be my thing. Is I think I'm tired of Dalek stories if you're going to tell the same ones. I really like the Revolution episodes.
I've not seen them yet.
Of fake fan of of the new of Jodie's era that Chibnall's done. I like the way they've done that. I think that's made them feel more special, more different. But I think this does it to an even greater extent where I think you're right. I think if you put a Dalek in this show, you ruin the show. I think I like the idea of maybe in one episode the word exterminate is said, and you see that's the first time he's heard this word, or something gestating in his mind, or something to that effect. And just seeing Easter eggs like that, but make them Easter eggs. Don't make them.
Yeah.
Oh, this is where he learned the word exterminate. Let's have a 20-minute discussion and debate on it.
Yeah, and like I think the appearance of things like that and things that shape Davros would be really is an interesting idea, because I mean I absolutely adore the character of Davros, because I just think there's a lot more human in him than he's probably given time to see. Until the last couple of appearances of him, we didn't really see. You know, you look at the what's it called, the reality bomb or whatever it was called.
Yeah, where he moves all the planets.
That was very much a maniacal Davros, whereas actually you then see him later, he's almost, he knows he's failed, but at the same time he's succeeded because of his creations have done the thing he wanted them to do.
Yeah.
He just didn't realise that's what he wanted. But
yeah,
there are these things that kind of obviously shaped him.
Yeah.
To be a worse person, maybe he even intended, that we don't see. And I think they're the really things that I think I wanted to kind of pick up on. The other side of it as well, like I honestly think there's room in the second and third seasons to, or how many seasons it will be, to have people like the Master turn up.
Yeah, I think
like
you'd have to be careful.
Him, no. I think if I was to have the Master turn up, the Master would be from a timeline where the Daleks are around. Yeah. And so the Master would know who Davros is, but he wouldn't let on to it, but he'd certainly, in that episode, would push him towards this path that he's going down.
I think that would actually be an exciting place to bring back maybe a John Sim, maybe a Michelle Gomez, maybe I think it's Eric Roberts in the TV movie, someone like that, especially more Eric Roberts, just because he's not done much yet. It would be exciting to have him in, and for the audience that don't know, it doesn't really matter, but for the audience that do know, they're going to be clued into what's actually going on. We're going to have an extra hint.
Yeah, but yes, I don't know I don't know where my fascination with Davros came from. I think, if anything, it came from the fact that growing up, my mother always used to say she knew the person who played Davros back in the 80s, 90s sort of thing. No,
okay,
not 90s.
Cool.
And so I was like, oh, this is a character who, you know, I think the guy who played it was from Birmingham, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And that's where that came from for me, and I think then knowing the lore has then grown that fascination for me. But I think there's a very human character underneath it.
He is in a similar way to the Master is an antonym to the Doctor. I feel like Davros is in a very different way. He's a much more he's much simpler in his aims and resolve than the Master. The Master's all over the place, but I think he's also much more he has much more conviction compared to the Master. I think the Master kind of just does whatever.
The Master is conflicted,
a bit of chaos. But I also think even in the evil, there's just a bit of chaos. There's not really a master plan most of the time. Whereas I think here, the idea with the Master, with the Davros, it's like Davros knows what Davros wants. Davros works towards this and stays on this one path, never swaying away from it. And
I really want to make Davros talk about himself in third person. They've done that. Davros knows what Davros.
That'd be interesting.
No, I think there is that. Like, I think it was in the episodes with the reality bomb, and was it reality bomb? I can't remember what it's called, but like where
it's called a reality bomb. It's where he puts the planets together.
But like that's where you. Because that's it. Because you see the Doctor Donner.
Yes. And
he, like Davros, directly says that they're the same, that Davros and the Doctor are the same, and I feel like compared to the Master and the Doctor are very similar, but I don't ever feel like the Doctor could have gone down the path of the Master, but I do feel like, especially with the way that I'm creating these parallels between them in the early parts of this series, and the Doctor being part of that turning point, I do feel like the Doctor very easily could have gone down the same path as as Davros.
I think this is a very good way of redeeming the Daleks without featuring them. I think it gives them some credibility again, some street cred, if you will. I think it makes them cool, makes them interesting, and I think you could then have maybe a mainline Doctor Who episode where they visit Davros. If you're allowed to do that, I don't really know how it would work with the time.
Well, I think it just means that any time that we see Davros I think any time we see Davros or every time we see the Daleks from then on, it would have this kind of like the way that the prequels did with Darth Vader.
Yeah.
You have this tragic backstory that every time you look at them, you go, he's terrifying, yes, but there's a reason why.
Yeah.
And I think that's very much how I see this. I really liked it. I really liked doing the research on this because I had no idea about most of the things that were happening on Skaro at the time. But yeah.
Okay, so the question we come to at the end of these episodes, just as the lift doors are about to be opened, what are we going to call them?
Well, I know mine is called The Creation of Evil.
Oh, that's good.
I know, right?
Can I make one suggested addition?
Yeah.
And I will very quickly explain why. I hate, and you haven't done this isn't about you, I hate the idea that we have these famous characters, and you didn't do it, so I'm glad, like Davros or Ahsoka, and they have like a history of years and millennia, and then we come up with a show and we're like, yeah, this one's just Ahsoka. I'm like, yes, but what about the rest of it? Is this all of it? You know what I mean? I don't like what Marvel's done where they've called it Loki. All I'm asking for is a subtitle. So the only suggestion I'd call it Davros for Creation of Evil.
Maybe.
I'd get his name in there. But yeah, I really, really detest calling shows about characters just their character with no subtitle. Just give it a subtitle.
Yeah. Because you give it no context as to, but where in Loki's timeline are we? But we know it because of where we are.
And this is the other problem I have is, but if you do it that way, you can have a different season set irrelevant to the first season. So Ahsoka, every series will now have to be consecutive, whereas if you'd done it before, you could have skipped 10 years.
It's kind of like they've got Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home. It's not just Spider-Man and then Spider-Man 2.
I like the numbers more, but I don't like them especially in TV. I think in TV, you really need to give something a subtitle. You need to tell people what it is and where it goes. Just like you would a comic or a book. You wouldn't just call the book Ahsoka, the comic Ahsoka. It would be like something.
There are things like that, but yeah. What are you going to call yours?
I am going to just go back on everything I just ranted about for 2 minutes. I've really struggled with a name for this one. I put a lot of ideas up, and I think every episode should be titled individually.
Yeah.
And I was tossing up, well, maybe each episode is just called like the name of the monster. So the Zygon one is just called Zygon or Vashtinarada, and I like that idea. But it also kind of will spoil the episode.
Yeah.
It will ruin mysteries and reveals, especially the Zygon one. But the idea that I definitely want in the title, and I think the best way of doing it is just simply the one word. I think it should just be called Monsters. And I think each episode then has some sort of episode title in the same way Black Mirror is called Black Mirror, and then there's lots of episodes in it.
Yeah.
I think it's simple, but I think it's effective, and I think it makes it clear that this is not about any companions coming back. This is really about us looking at the monsters of the universe and seeing what's happening. I do have one thing
to say about the names though, and I think this is both something I hate in the current era of Star Wars, but also something that makes a lot more sense now that we do stuff like this.
Yeah.
Is that there's you were to look at a logo, of course, the Creation of Evil will have a little Doctor Who bit underneath it to point towards the fact that this is a Doctor Who spin-off series.
I wouldn't, but carry on.
But this is the thing, is that as with my producer head on and sort of going, well, how do we know that this is definitely a Doctor Who series and stuff like that? This is where you get the things like a Star Wars story, as much as I absolutely hate that.
So you hate that? I absolutely adore it. I adore the idea of calling them Star Wars stories.
Or like a Doctor Who story.
No, because it works with Star Wars. I don't think it works in any other universe. I think especially the way the title treatments are done.
Oh yeah.
I think it just feels Star Warsy. I think it doesn't work. I don't think you could do that probably for any other franchise. But I think just in specifically Star Wars, it just felt right to me.
Fair enough. I do get what you mean because it's anthology and that's the whole point. But what my point is with ours especially is that because it's on terrestrial TV, there need to be a way of signifying that this is associated with Doctor Who.
With my show, I don't think it should. I think you should discover that this is like that Doctor Who episode while you're watching. I don't want to scream this is a spin-off. You would, because that's how you announce a show. But I don't think it would be a spin-off. I think it would be set within the universe. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Whereas mine's a spin-off. Well, and I think mine would make sense if I then had Davros, the creation of evil, because you immediately go, Davros, that's name. Doctor Who. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've done our 3 Doctor Who spin-offs. We've done Monsters, The Creation of Evil, and Godzilla versus Daleks.
That's
or
the best
Dalek?
one.
Is it 1? Is it 3? Is it
No,
10?
it's 1 Dalek, so it's Godzilla versus Dalek.
Would you rather fight a Godzilla-sized Dalek or a Dalek-sized Godzilla? On that note, thank you very much for listening, guys. We shall see you all next time. Follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook. We are on YouTube, so press the subscribe button. Even if you never want to come back, it helps us. If you want to know when episodes are going up, press the notification bell, and we are on Spotify, podcasts, and everywhere you can find your podcasts. Yeah. Thank you very much for listening. Let us know what you thought in the comments down below, and we will see you next time.
See you soon, guys.